Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are and whatever time of day it is. I want to welcome you all to the fourth episode of Agree to Disagree, Sports Talk with Zach and Boo. Today we are in the ATD studio recording on a beautiful, beautiful afternoon. This week was very exciting for the SEC in particular. Zach, I have a question for you. Is the SEC back?
Booch, I really do believe that the SEC is back. You know, the past couple of weeks we have seen some slips of teams, some teams falling back, such as the likes of Ole Miss, Tennessee, now Texas A&M's kind of out of the picture a little bit after the loss to Alabama. But we've also seen other teams, their stock rise a little bit. We've seen LSU and Auburn and even Kentucky down in the lower half. They're starting to rise a little bit. So this was a big weekend for teams to make a push. And there's also a weekend for teams that really fell down a little bit.
No, they aren't back. And we'll get into that a little later. We have a lot to talk about today. But first, let's talk about what we're calling in a new segment, the Giant Skater.
You mean Slayer? Giant Slayer?
No, you sent me an email on Sunday and you said the Giant Skater.
I meant Slayer. It's my fault. Honest mistake.
Okay. Honesty.
Just excited.
We are all about honesty. Zach, what were the biggest upsets for this past week?
Well, the big one that really jumps out to the whole college football world and that really made a lot of teams very excited was Penn State knocking off Ohio State 24-21 in the whiteout game at Penn State. And this was a very huge highlight win that Penn State coach James Franklin really needed. He's had 2 7-6 seasons, the past 2 seasons, as taken over the program for the Nittany Lions. And we've seen him have some stability at his previous stop in Vanderbilt. We thought he's a very good coach that is going to have a great future, especially going back to a place that has tons of potential in Penn State. He was 24-15 at Vanderbilt, and he really needed this win. Hadn't had a huge win since being the head coach for the Nittany Lions, and this was huge. It really just set the pace for a lot of other teams from the outside looking in to make that push to get in the playoff. And another game I want to look at is SMU defeating number 11 Houston. Houston, after beating Oklahoma opening week, had this huge spotlight on them. That if they won out, that they would get that one of those 4 playoff spots, and also had that huge highlighted matchup with Louisville down the road in this season. That was really going to set up for a nice game, receiving a lot of hype. This is the second time they slipped up, and this game really knocked them out of it, and is really knocking them out of the picture for even a New Year's Six game. They lost 38-16 at SMU, so that was real upsetting to see by Cougar fans out there.
Zach, does it put a dip in Tom Herman's coaching stock?
Honestly, I don't think that it does, because if he is at a place with a lot of talent and a place where he can go get top recruits, we have seen what he can do on the coaching side. We've seen what he's done at Houston the past 2 seasons. We've seen what he did at Ohio State. He can coach. He's very innovative at doing what he does. He's a very good coach, very good motivator, and I don't think it puts a dip in his stock at all.
Now let's shift our focus from the football field to the ice rink. Cubs make it to the World Series.
Booge, I don't mean to bust your bubble here, but I believe that baseball is played on a diamond, not on a ice rink.
I'm sorry.
That would be hockey, is what you're referencing.
I'm sorry. Well, let's talk about the Diamondbacks and the Cubs going to the World Series. Zach, you take this.
It is so good to see the Chicago Cubs back in the World Series. It has been 71 years since we have seen this awesome franchise in a World Series. It is so awesome to see them back there. They are also taking on a team that has been in a drought from the World Series in the Cleveland Indians. So this is going to be a very fun one to watch.
Again, we're shifting focus here from the Diamondback. Now we're going to the ballroom floor. Quick NBA preview for opening season. Zach, you take this.
As everybody knows, I'm a big basketball fan. This is this is really my favorite time of the year where we're in the heart of football season and the beginning of basketball season. Both NBA and soon college is going to be tipping off here soon. So I'm just going to give a little preview of my top 5 preseason teams, both on the east side and on the west side. For the east, let's get right into it. The number 1 team, I believe, is the Cleveland Cavs, led by the GOAT of our century at least. 2, I'm going to go with Boston. I like what they did by picking up Al Horford in the offseason. I think Isaiah Thomas is a great young guard. Number 3, we're going out to Drake Country, Toronto. I believe that they are a steady team, very consistent in who they are and who they have been the past couple of years. I think that trend continues into this new season. Number 4, I'm going to go with the Atlanta Hawks. Maybe a little shocker to some people, but after the top 3 teams, I believe it's just a big hold and who's the next team to step up there, but I do like what they're doing in Atlanta. Number 5, I think Indiana is going to be pretty good. I do like what they have done by adding Jeff Teague, Thad Young, and Al Jefferson. So that's kind of my top 5 teams in the East. Now shifting our focus over to the Western Conference, number 1, as everybody probably knows what I'm going to say, Golden State Warriors. We all know what they have done. Don't really need to talk about that. Number 2, one of the greatest franchises in history of all time, in any sport, San Antonio Spurs. They do things the right way in San Antonio, and I really love Greg Popovich. Number 3, I like the LA Clippers. I know we always have hype for them in preseason, but I do think that they are set up to do pretty good things in the West this year. Number 4, I do like the Portland Trailblazers. Dame Lillard is one of my favorite players, and I do think that they're going to be very good this season. Number 5 is going to be a little shocker, Utah Jazz. I really like what they have done this offseason by getting a veteran point guard, George Hill. And the young players that they have, I really think they're all going to take a big jump up as players this year.
Let's move on into our review segment. NC State versus Louisville. It was 54-13 Louisville. I think I said it last week. Louisville was going to wipe the floor with NC State. But no, I said I knew a guy who used to work at NC State, and I knew why he left. Well, you all saw it Saturday. Louisville ran over North Carolina. They had no chance. Might as well not even shown up to the game on Saturday.
It just looked like they had a hangover from that game. Like they haven't recovered from that mentally and obviously physically from translating onto the field. It just did not look good. Things were not working out. They could not get anything going. And on the other side, it was the Lamar Jackson show once again, Booge, like we have seen pretty much every single week of this season. The man is unbelievable. He's doing some great things for that team. Without him, I think they are just a mediocre team. He elevates everybody around him. In this game, he was 20 of 34 for 355 yards, 3 touchdowns, 17 carries for 76 yards and a touchdown. He is unreal, and I think it's going to be very hard for somebody to dethrone him from getting the Heisman Trophy.
West Virginia, TCU. The score was 34-10 West Virginia. You know, I said I was a TCU fan. That totally changed my mindset last Saturday. TCU, what happened? I mean, come on, you at least make it a game. Make it a game. But West Virginia came out ready to win, and did they ever? It was a beating.
One of the biggest letdowns of this season so far has been the play of TCU. They were picked kind of as like Preston mentioned.
The Horned Frogs.
The Horned Frogs. They were kind of picked as like a little dark horse to make that 4-team college football playoff. And the past couple of years, they've been one of the more consistent programs in the country. You know, you can always count about 9 to 10 wins and always on the outside, on the verge of getting into that playoff. And this year, Gary Patterson has not been able to really do anything with this team. Kenny Hill has been very inconsistent, which, you know, led to him being dismissed from that Texas A&M squad. But they just look bad. And on the other side, in West Virginia, they are quietly undefeated. A team that's not really getting much respect despite their undefeated record. You know, the Big 12 is down, so that really plays into it. But Skylar Howard, their quarterback, very, very good. When he has time to throw it and when he's kind of on his game, he's got one of the best arms in the country, and no one's talking about him. So I'm going to give him some kudos right now. Skylar, doing a great job in Morgantown. Kudos to you, dude.
Ole Miss, LSU, 38-21 LSU. You know, it seems like once you lose to Alabama, your stock immediately starts to drop. You look at Arkansas and then you look at Ole Miss. Both teams were pretty good. Then they played Alabama. Again this week, Ole Miss showed us what happens when you lose to Alabama. For some reason, their stock is dropping like no other. Take a rock, go to the very top of the Empire State Building and just drop it.
Right, Ole Miss on a Sharpie on that puppy, and then there you go.
Just drops. It was at about 75 to 80% at the beginning of the season. Then they lost to Alabama. It dropped down to 35%, and it's going to continue to drop.
But on a real note, Booge, one of the most underrated things in the world of sports, and I think is one of the most important things, is the psychological state of mind of the football team, and also momentum. LSU has tons of momentum. They've got Leonard back. He played great in that game. And their state of mind is very positive. Things are on the verge. Their stock is rising up over in Baton Rouge. And on the other end, over in Ole Miss, it's just kind of beginning to look like a train wreck, kind of. I'm not trying to talk down to what they've been able to do this year. They played some great ball this year. But the state of mind of that team just looks bruised. The morale looks low, and just it does not look good for them as we're looking at their schedule. I see them at best maybe getting to 6-6. I don't see them beating Auburn, and I don't see them beating Texas A&M. I just think things aren't looking great over there for this season, but I'm not going to downplay the success that they have had this year. At times they've looked very, very good.
Auburn versus Arkansas, 56-6. Auburn. This game was like writing your name and number on a piece of paper and handing it to a random female saying, "You're pretty, you want to go out?" It's simply a high school move, and right now that's what level Arkansas is at. High school.
Rush the ball all over the field. That is what we saw in Auburn this past weekend. They ran the ball all over Arkansas. Listen to these stats right here. I'm about to go over their rushing game. Petway, 192 yards, 2 touchdowns. Stove, 94 yards, 1 touchdown. Martin, 80 yards, 1 touchdown. Truitt, 78 yards, 2 touchdowns.
And again, once you play Alabama, your stock will drop. That's a fact. It's simple math. That's what happened in this game. Look at Ole Miss. Look at Arkansas. That's your proof. I don't think Arkansas is that good of a football team. And I feel the same about Ole Miss. I'm predicting Auburn will run over Ole Miss this Saturday.
Yeah, like you said, Arkansas has been a very inconsistent team this year. You never know what Razorback squad are going to get on a given Saturday. But yes, Auburn had their way with that defense. It's a defense that has been pretty decent over the course of the season. They've had some bad games, but it's been a defense that hasn't been awful. So that was really surprising to see the way that Auburn had their way up front and just bullied them on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Now we're going to get into the big highlight game of last weekend, Bama and Texas A&M. Bama 33, Texas A&M 14. Booge, start us off.
Marcus Spears said something yesterday on the Paul Feinbaum show, I'm paraphrasing here, that you figure out if you're a good team once you play Alabama. You don't know how good or bad you are until you play Alabama. That's just how it's been for the past 9-10 years. And I couldn't agree more. I would like to add to the statement, once you play Alabama, your stock is going to drop. I think that's the theme for this episode, especially for me. Once you play Alabama, your stock is going to drop. That's just what happened this week, and that's what's going to happen in 2 weeks. I'm not predicting anything, but let's just say their stock's going to drop. And I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and Bama's defense continues scoring.
10 games in a row.
Jonathan Allen showing a little speed there in the scoop and score, and that defense looks great. We're also going to talk about the big loss that Alabama suffered by losing Eddie Jackson to a season-ending injury. We'll talk about that in the preview, I'm sure. But let's talk about Jalen Hurts real quick. You were very high on him, and I'm beginning to get very high on him. He has been very consistent. And every week we always talk, not just us, but we hear it on all these sports shows. Everyone's saying this could be the week where we see him show his true freshman form, where we see him struggle, where we see him kind of falter. But we hadn't really seen that yet.
We're just not seeing it.
We're just tick, 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 but we haven't. No one's seen it yet. He's been very consistent. Coaches are putting him in positions to excel. They are really adapting what they do around his strengths, which is what good coaches do. They don't shove players into a system. They put the system around the players. And that is what Alabama has done so well, and that's what great programs do. Jalen Hurts was 15-25, 164 yards, 2 touchdowns, 21 carries, 93 yards, 1 touchdown. When have we seen an Alabama quarterback run the ball 21 times in a game? This is showing that the scheme and mindset of the coaches have really shifted because, we've never really seen an Alabama quarterback run the ball 21 times.
Yeah, you said 15 of 25, but that 15 was short passes. He continues to struggle in the long ball, and I think he's going to continue to struggle with the long ball. This offense is really going to help him. Hopefully, he's just throwing every day. Just throw the ball. Throw the long ball. Try to get a little bit more accurate with your passing. And another thing, Adam Griffith. I'm just going to take a moment here just to go off on a little rant. How long has Adam Griffith been a player for the Alabama Crimson Tide, Zach?
I feel like he has been there for years.
He has been there.
Years.
He's been there for at least 6 or 7 years that I know of. He might have been there for more. It's ridiculous. I don't understand it. You're there for one job. You don't have this job and then you have 2 other jobs. No, you're there for one job. All you do Monday to Saturday, maybe even on Sunday, you kick the ball through the uprights. We hear it all the time. Yeah, he's making those in practice. Gary and Vern said it before the game. Yeah, he was kicking them in practice. Then he gets on the field and chokes. It is absolutely ridiculous. If I was Nick Saban, I would have thrown him off the field 2 years ago. I don't understand it. Can we not recruit a field goal kicker? Is there not a soccer player out there that can't kick the freaking ball? It's getting absurd. Alabama fans are done with it. Get off the field. I never want to see you again. In Alabama history.
Come on, man.
No, I'm serious. Alabama history shows we kick field goals every single game. Look at the LSU game a couple years ago when Alabama beat LSU in the national championship. That regular season game we played LSU, we had to kick how many field goals? And we lost the game. What if that happens in 2 weeks? What if it happens? LSU stops us every drive and we have to kick a field goal. I'm scared. I would much rather Nick Saban go for it on 4th down every time than put Adam Griffith out on the field. I want Adam Griffith to retire his number, retire his jersey, go up in the student section, enjoy the game. One job. Nick Saban, he has one job. Coach him to do his one job correctly. Everybody else on the field is doing fine. Defense is excelling. Jalen Hurts, he has an issue, but everywhere else he's excelling. The running backs excelling. The receivers excelling. The only person that I find on Alabama's roster is Adam Griffith. His stock dropped 3 years ago, and it's going to continue to drop after his senior year, which is this year, by the way. I might just go up on senior day, give him a hug, give him $100 and say, hey, good luck for your future endeavors, wherever you go. I'm tired of it. And all the Alabama fans out there know we are tired of it. That's enough. I'm done ranting about Adam Griffith. Please leave. Just leave. Leave. Go back home, wherever you came from. Go do whatever you did before you got there. Just leave. I'm going to take a deep breath here.
That was Rants by Booge.
That was Rants. That is exactly what that was. Zach, why don't you introduce our new segment for this week? That's right, a new segment for this week. Zach, take it away.
This is going to be called ATD Rapid Fire. There will be some statements said, and there will be 2 minutes for us to talk about them. We will be either stating that we agree with them or disagree with them. And this is all about SEC football. That is the category for this week's ATD Rapid Fire segment.
First quote, there will be no less than 3 new head coaches in the SEC next year. This was a toughie. It really was. I'm going to... I'm going to disagree with this. I think there's going to be less than 3. Yep, I disagree with this.
I'm going to disagree with this as well, Booge. I really only think there's possibly maybe one big one that jumps out to me, and that's the LSU. We still don't know if Orgeron will.
Coach Orgeron.
We don't know if he'll get retained or not, but that's the only one. That's the only real big iffy one. So I'm gonna disagree with that one. Next statement: Will Muschamp will turn things around at South Carolina. Booge, start us off.
Yeah, Will Muschamp. He's definitely going to turn this around. It's his first year. I don't look at your first year as a big deal. You have other coaches, players. You didn't recruit these guys. You don't really have a good relationship with these guys yet. That's not really what happens in the first year. So I definitely will be looking towards Will Muschamp and South Carolina in his second season. I think he's definitely going to turn things around.
I definitely agree with this. I do like Will Muschamp, and I think he will turn things around at South Carolina. Steve Spurrier kind of took off with recruiting his past couple of years, didn't do a great job of that, and he has admitted to that. So the strength of what Muschamp does is recruiting. He's going to bring in some great players there. Kids are going to want to come play for him. What they have there is a good, solid group of young freshmen that are making an impact on the offensive side of the ball right now. The quarterback, all their running backs basically, and the receivers are all very, very young, freshmen or sophomore. I think great things will happen in South Carolina eventually.
What about this one, Zach? It will be a rematch of Alabama and Tennessee in the SEC Championship in Atlanta.
This one's really tough to tell right now, but I'm going to have to disagree with it. I'm not sold on Tennessee. I know a lot of people are saying Florida's not going to be able to pull it out, but I do think that it won't be Tennessee necessarily representing the East. On the other side, I'm not 100% locking in Bama right now just because of this nice thing that LSU has got going right now. Still think Bama will most likely be there, but this big Bama-LSU game is going to have a lot of implication.
I agree with half of it. I agree that, yes, Alabama is going to be there if they can get past LSU. We'll keep that for the preview segment next episode, Zach. Tennessee, it's a tough call. If they get there, it's going to be much of the same. Alabama's going to roll over them if Alabama gets there. If Tennessee doesn't get there, it's definitely going to be Florida. And I said it a few episodes ago, Florida, Alabama in the SEC Championship is a classic game. I'd much rather see that than that throw-up orange, that garbage convention coming up into Atlanta. No, I want to see Florida, Bama.
All right, last one. Both Vandy and Kentucky will make a bowl game this season. Booze, what you got?
It's a sad, sad day in the SEC when Vanderbilt is potentially bowl eligible. Sad day. Yeah, I have to agree with this one. I'm sorry. Yeah, I agree. Vandy and Kentucky, I believe they'll both go to a bowl. But will I watch it? No, I won't. Just a protest.
I disagree with this. I think Kentucky will make a bowl game. Vanderbilt's got a couple of hard games remaining on their season. I think Kentucky will make it. I like Vandy and I like what Kentucky's doing, but I don't think Vandy will make it to a bowl game.
Now let's go into the preview segment. First up, we're doing Michigan versus Michigan State. Big game for both teams. Michigan needs a win to get to the playoffs, and Michigan State just needs a win to save their season.
Yeah, a lot of people aren't giving the Spartans a chance. I'm really not either, but it's going to be a little different dynamic because it is a big rivalry game. This is always usually a close game, despite the successes and failures of the two teams. Michigan comes in averaging 48 points per game, 483 yards per game, with a very balanced attack with the run and the pass. They're balanced in what they do, and their defense is very good, only allows 194 yards per game. Michigan State really doesn't have anything going on the offensive side of the ball, so I don't think this is going to be close, but like I said, it's going to come out of the gates being a nice, tough contest in maybe the first quarter, but then after that, Michigan's just going to dominate, I believe.
I'm going to say it again. Once you lose to Alabama, your stock is going to drop. Look what happened to Michigan State. Michigan State lost big time to Alabama in the playoff game last year, and look what happened. Their stock is falling. I dare you, listeners out there, to disagree with me. You might think, hey, what's wrong with Booch this week? You're a little mad, a little testy. I'm fired up.
Fired up. I like it, Booch. Now we're going to go into a nice, interesting game. Preseason, we thought this would be a very, very huge game, which it still has a lot of importance to it. But Clemson, Florida State, what you got?
Big game for Clemson. They cannot afford to lose this one. They're playing for the playoffs. That's what they're playing for. They can't afford to lose it. On the other hand, Florida State needs a win. Jimbo Fisher needs a win. It's going to be very interesting to watch. If Florida State loses and they go into next season with all these losses, I dare you to disagree with me on this, listeners. Jimbo Fisher, his seat's getting a little warm.
Woo! I gotta disagree with you on that one. He's a great coach, and I think any program would love to have him. I think he is in no verge of losing his job. Like I said, a lot of teams would love to have him. This is just kind of a little down year in Florida State expectations in their eyes, but he's a great coach. He's safe. And Clemson had an off week to really correct mistakes and watch that NC State game where they should have lost. They're going to come back looking fired up, ready to play, to play up to the expectations that the fans and that they have set for themselves. So I'm looking to see a nice, really fired up Clemson offense, Clemson defense, really getting after it. I think they blow out Florida State. Now, a nice rivalry game in Jacksonville, Florida, a game that me and Booge are going to be at tomorrow. The big rivalry game, Florida and Georgia. I think this is going to be a nice win for the Gators. We'll talk about that later in the quick score. But I think Luke Del Rio has to take some shots down the field. This is a weaker Georgia pass defense that we've seen over the years, giving up 230 yards per game. Del Rio is going to have to play better. He did not look good at all against Missouri. I know it was his first game back from an injury, but he did not look good at all. Piron and Scarlett, those are two great backs. You've got to ride them in this game. That combo is going to be very effective. I think the run game, set up the pass game, going to be good for the Gators. Eason is going to have to be careful where he throws the ball. This is a very good secondary he's playing against, so he's going to have to be careful where he throws that ball. And that O-line has to really be ready for that Gator front seven.
Florida is fighting for the SEC championship, and Georgia is just trying to get through the season. I think Florida has the upper hand into this game, but on the other hand, Georgia has nothing to lose, so it is going to be interesting to see. And luckily, me and Zach both get to see it firsthand, so that's going to be a blast. Washington, Utah. Zach, what do you think?
For Washington, they're sitting in the top four right now. Utah is a pretty good team in their own right. I think they have some things that they do that can give the Huskies some trouble. These are two of the best defenses in the Pac-12, so I think that will be interesting. Gaskins, the running back of the Huskies, has to help out the passing game because Utah is going to really be expecting Browning in that passing game. So the running game of the Huskies is going to have to step up. And also, on the other side of the ball, Tim Williams, the quarterback for the Utes, will have to be efficient throwing the ball. He likes to run it a lot, but he's going to have to make some plays through the air for the Utes to have success in this game.
What do I think of Washington, Utah? I really don't care. So I'm going to skip this one. Auburn, Ole Miss. I said it earlier. Ole Miss, their stock has dropped, and it's going to continue to drop. It's a theme for this week for me. Their stocks are going to drop, and it's going to continue to drop after this game. Yes, I'm saying Auburn will win. They might even win by 21 points. A lot of phone screens will be shattered during this game.
Like I talked about earlier, the momentum aspect of the game, the psychological state of mind that comes into play here. Like I said, Auburn on the rise, Ole Miss on the downfall. I think that continues in this game. Auburn has found a little bit of consistency on the offensive side of the ball.
There's going to be glass everywhere.
I think Auburn will win this game.
Once again, it's time for our quick score segment.
Booge and all of you listeners out there, I am feeling a little bit of the upset bug, so a lot of my picks may surprise you. Definitely going to surprise some of you people out there, so buckle up.
West Virginia, Oklahoma State. I have West Virginia beating Oklahoma 34-30.
I got West Virginia 31, Oklahoma State 17.
Tennessee, South Carolina, 24-21 Tennessee.
One of my surprises right here, South Carolina 27, Tennessee 20.
Miami versus Notre Dame, 28-17 Miami.
Miami 24, Notre Dame 21.
Nebraska, Wisconsin, 3-10 Wisconsin.
Nebraska 17, Wisconsin 14.
Kentucky, Mizzou, 30-10 Kentucky.
I think Kentucky gets the dub, 34-31.
UCF versus Houston, 21-14 UCF.
I think UCF wins 31-28.
Maryland, Indiana, 10-14 Maryland.
I think Maryland wins 30-20.
Baylor, Texas, 34-28 Texas.
I think Baylor wins 27-20.
Michigan versus Michigan State, 38-28 Michigan.
Michigan 42, Michigan State 21.
Clemson versus Florida State, 41-34 Clemson.
Clemson 35, Florida State 20.
And the game me and Zach are going to be at, Florida versus Georgia, 24-17 Georgia.
Florida 33, Georgia 16.
Talk about upsets. Georgia 24-17.
Yeah.
Washington versus Utah. Washington wins 62-22.
Got Utah 35-30.
Auburn versus Ole Miss. Make sure you got the Swiffers and the brooms. You're going to have to clean up some glass here. 38-21 Auburn.
42-28 Auburn.
And that is it for episode 4. Zach, we've done 4 of these mugs now.
And that is crazy. Also, I want to give a shout out to Preston filling in for me last week. Thank you, Preston. Did a great job. I'm feeling much better. I'm fired up, ready for some SEC football tomorrow in Jacksonville.
Thank you all to the listeners who were worried about Zach. He is doing fine. I'm looking at him right now. He's a little green, a little pale, but he's feeling just fine. No, I'm just kidding. He looks fantastic.
I'm great.
He's great. I'm great. Preston, thank you so much for joining me last week. Who knows? We might see you again. I might get sick. Zach might get sick. You never know. If we both get sick, Preston, it's all you, man.
Yeah.
Once again, this is Agree to Disagree Sports Talk with Zach and Booj. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at ATD Sports Talk. We have an Instagram at ATD Sports Talk. On iTunes, Agree to Disagree Sports Talk. And on YouTube, Agree to Disagree Sports Talk. Y'all have a wonderful week.
Take care, everybody.